How do I stress test my retirement plan? You hear me talk a lot about stress testing my plan in my videos, and a viewer comment came in and said, "Hey Joe, what actions besides the normal experience inside a new retirement, just filling in the blanks, besides those actions, what do you do to stress test your plan specifically? Be as detailed as you can." So that viewer comment came in. I do read all the comments. If you make a comment and you see a little love from and it's actually looks like a little heart on a reply to that, that can only come from their creator. So that means I read your comment. And I read 99% of them. So keep them coming. Most of my videos come from your comments. So retirement plan stress testing is very important to my confidence to spend money, confidence to maintain my asset allocation. It's just very important to my peace of mind, ability to sleep. So what actions am I taking that are not so obvious, that aren't just filling in blanks, that you're prompted to in a particular software package? And I'm going to be talking about a lot about New Retirement here because it's the one I use. Now, I'm not going to be talking about obvious things like input and returns, okay? It prompts you for returns, pessimistic, average, optimistic, expenses, one-time expenses, tax management, including Roth Explorer. Roth Explorer is phenomenal with New Retirement, best by far out there. But you enter inflation numbers, pessimistic, average, and optimistic. That for general goods, you enter the inflation for home, inflation for medical. So there's all kinds of things you're just automatically entering. But what are the other things that I do that make me feel good and give me confidence to spend and test the overall strength of my plan? So my goal in stress testing my plan is to make it fail and then go through an exercise to fix it. How do I make it solve? Okay, this helps me know the levers and gives me confidence that no matter what happens in the market, I know the powerful levers that I can move to help my plan be successful. And that's what's so critical when you're retiring. Everything's an estimate based on history, and the future is not going to be exactly like the past. So you need to know what your levers are and how big of levers they are. So things like, hey, I'll make it fail by let's see, very high inflation, say very high inflation. So, okay, what can I do? How much do I have to reduce my expenses? Is there anything I can do with Social Security timing? Does an annuity make sense, getting a fixed payment? What about asset allocation? Should I get more fixed, get more aggressive with stocks, change that allocation? So I just play around with it to try to make it solve. It's kind of a little bit of game, but I'm telling you, it gives me great confidence to spend and to go on with my life without losing sleep and making crazy decisions. So let's get right into it. I got 7 things that I look at that aren't typical, maybe typical for you, but not typical in the spreadsheet or the retirement package that jumps out at you and says you need to do this. Number 1 is model early deaths as well as late deaths. Okay, most people worry about outliving their money. Okay, so they put in there they're going to live to 95. Okay, which that's a whole nother discussion how old you'll be when you die. But don't forget about the surviving spouse, especially if somebody dies early. Okay, so say somebody dies at 70. Well, the surviving spouse is going to have increased taxes because they're filing as a single. They're going to have a lower Social Security payments, right? Because one person died. Could have a drain on long-term care expenses depending on how they died, how long that was. And you can have a loss of a pension. So this can be very important for a lot of people. I would want to know this, okay? So model an early death as well as a late death. And if there's 2 spouses, model both of them, okay? Model both of them. So don't forget to do that. The second one, I smile when I look at this one. The category is called crazy spending. Okay, so I have a line item under expenses called crazy spending. And what it is I put in normally it's $0 a month expense for crazy spending, and then I look at my plan. But then when I want it to fail, I may take that crazy spending and I'm going to add $500 a month and see what my Monte Carlo changes to. And then I may add $1,000 a month and see what my Monte Carlo changes to. Now, what this does for me is it simulates, okay, a car repair that comes up, and then the next month I have to replace my water heater. Well, I have confidence that, okay, I had two back-to-back $1,000 events. Okay, I'm going to be okay. I really, because there was only two of them, and I've modeled this with $500 a month, and my plan still was above 90% Monte Carlo. So I really just kind of put this in there just to know where to fail, and I like it. Crazy spending. Consider adding that to your retirement plan. Number 3. And this is something I'm disappointed that more software packages don't have this, and I'm working with the folks with New Retirement on this. But having go-go spending and slow-go spending spelled out in the expenses. Most software packages just say, hey, list your recurring expenses, and here's a template of things to consider: your cable bill, your auto gasoline and electric bill, has all these stuff listed out. All well and good, but what about go-go spending? Okay, I use go-go spending up through age 75, and say you add $1,000 a month through age 75, and then at age 75 through 80, you go into slow-go spending, so those 5 years. And then when you get to be 80, you go into just base level spending. So I have a base level spending that covers all going out to eat, paying bills, all that kind of stuff. But big expenses like, going to Alaska or going traveling and, maybe, playing a lot of golf or whatever you do for go-go, specifically calling that out. I see that missing so much from retirement plans. Many people in retirement planning, they just put in, I'm going to spend, $5,000 a month through age 95. Well, nobody does that. You have very little chance of doing that. Most of the time, people front load when they're younger. I'm 60, so my spending between 60 and 75 is going to be at a higher rate than, when I'm 85 to 90, okay? So go-go and slow-go spending is how I stress test my plan. That's not typically called out as a blank to fill in on a retirement plan. Number 4 thing I do is I creep up inflation. Inflation's such a hot topic nowadays, and I may put in 2, 3, and 4% as my pessimistic, average, and optimistic inflation. Actually, those are reversed. I gave those backwards. Sorry about that. You know what I meant. But I'll have inflation creep up to maybe 5%, 6%, and just make it fail, and then look at expenses, Social Security timing, asset allocation, all those kind of things to see how I can make that solve. Be very careful with, making too many crazy decisions with inflation. It's such a powerful tool, because if you raise, inflation to 6% a year, that's every single year it builds on itself. And it can be huge. Most of the time, what I found, you can limit your spending. Don't buy a new car, don't buy a new house. That's a lot of inflation wrapped up in that. And you can buy alternative foods. Instead of buying steak, maybe buy hamburger, things like that. You have choices to manage your inflation. But I like to get a handle on inflation and, again, make it fail, see how I can resurrect it. The 5th thing I look at is I really dive into the returns some more. For example, in New Retirement, I put in 5% pessimistic returns for full stock funds. So like the S&P 500, I'll say 5% long-term is pretty bad returns. 7% is, average, and then 9% pretty optimistic. 9%, some people may say that's low for the optimistic S&P 500. It's low if you're looking in the rearview mirror, looking forward, a lot of people predicting that to be a little bit lower. So 9's not, it's a number. But I may really start dialing that down to 4, 3, 2 for the pessimistic, and just see how it fails. See what I have to do with expenses, again, Social Security, timing, all that kind of stuff, and see what levers I've got. Number 6, I titled this under sequence of return risk. And in new retirement, it's not labeled that way, but you're actually given the option on your assets. You can say, what kind of return are you getting right now? And then what kind of return do you want in the future? What this is intended to do is, say you're working and you're got 100% S&P 500. And then as you approach retirement, maybe you do a 60-40 portfolio and you dial down that return from like 10% to 7 or 6.5 or something like that because of your asset allocation. But I use that to model sequence of return risk. So what I'll do is I'll go in and say, okay, for now, my return now, I'm going to put in 2% return for my full stock funds for the next 5 years. And then after that, it's going up to this 5, 7, and 9 pessimistic, average, optimistic. So it goes back up to normal around 9 or something like that. But for the first 5 years, it's only 2. And then I may model 7 years at 2. So kind of tricking it into sequence of return risk. I like that one, okay? So the 7th thing I do that's not so obvious is I look at how many years of money I have in bucket 1 and in bucket 2. If you've watched any of my other videos, recent videos, I have quarterly videos that come out when I do an analysis, do my deep dive. All these things I only do do it once every 90 days. I stress test my plan. So I'll go in there and I use my spreadsheets for this. It's just the easiest in the way I started. I'll look at bucket 1. I target 5 years in bucket 1. These are things out of the stock market, CDs, bonds, money market fund, I-bonds, really fixed, pretty well fixed assets. They aren't going to lose 20%. We all talk about 2022 when bonds went down, but that was a 1 in 100 year event. But so I look at my bucket 1, I look at my bucket 2 money. My bucket 2 are all in bonds, okay? My bucket 1 is in high yield savings accounts, some CDs, things like that. So I've got 5 years in each, bucket 1 and bucket 2. So I look at that once a quarter and make sure that I've got about 5 and 5. If I don't, I look at how the stock market is doing. If it's near new highs, I'll take money out of bucket 3 and top off bucket 1 and 2 so that they can handle a short-term and an extended bear market. So that's kind of a bucket video in short. Bucket 1 and 2 are protection against down markets lasting up to 10 years, which you may not think that can happen, but it happened in 2000 to 2010. So the stuff does happen. That gives me about an 80-20 portfolio, 80 stock and 20 fixed assets. So I like where I'm at. And I make a choice of whether to rebalance, but I use my spreadsheets for that. You can do this in new retirement. It's a little more difficult. New retirement has a default order of how it takes money, your expenses out of which fund each month takes your funds out. You can direct that. It's just a little cumbersome, but the option is definitely there to do it. I just found it easier in my spreadsheet. So these are the 7 things I do quarterly to stress test my plan and give me confidence to spend. So did I miss anything that you do in your plan besides the obvious? I left out all the obvious things, okay? So don't give me the obvious ones. But think creative, innovative, unusual things that you're doing to stress test your plan that gives you more confidence, gives you insight. I'd love to hear about it. Maybe I'll add a number 8, 9, and 10 based on your feedback. Again, make sure you're checking out the comments. There's gold in there. It's Joe out.